Revenge films.
When I was in middle school, my mother cheated on my father. Normally, if someone cheats on them, they would be enraged and attack the other person. However, my father said the following words towards my mother, who cheated on him. "Thank you for everything. But now, go and live together with the person you love now, wherever you choose to live." He handed her a brown envelope filled with a lot of cash. They broke up right then and there without making a scene. Even after their divorce, my father never talked ill about my mother, and he never allowed me to talk ill about her either. Divorce is not an unusual thing. I have several friends whose parents are divorced. Some of them had to transfer to a different school, and others had to live with only one of their parents. But from all the divorce stories I heard from my friends, there's always a huge fight, and it's pandemonium. That's what I imagined would happen, because one betrayed their partner despite promising to be together forever. So I think it's just normal to feel angry toward the other person. But my father was different. He acted the complete opposite. He never shouted or made a huge scene. But I knew that it didn't mean he didn't care about my mother. As a middle schooler, I was aware that it was just normal to pay alimony. I was still a young boy back then, but I was wondering how much alimony my father would demand for my mother and the man. However, to my surprise, my father never demanded a penny from either my mom or the man as alimony. I couldn't comprehend why he didn't ask for alimony. I was at a rebellious stage in my life, so I told him, "Why won't you take any revenge from Mom and that man? What a shame! It's pitiable! Stop getting cold feet and take your revenge! That woman betrayed us!" I snarled at him, to which my father responded by hitting me with full force. "Are you crazy? She's your mother and the love of my life! How could you expect me to do that to her?" He shouted at me. I was physically and emotionally hurt. I couldn't comprehend why I had to suffer when I didn't do anything wrong. My mind and heart were a mess. I was still young at that time, and I never understood my father's thinking at that time. I was so mad at him that I couldn't hold my anger in. I might have felt that way, but I really felt pity for my father. I tried to understand why he wouldn't punish my mother for her actions. I also felt hopeless for not being able to do anything about the situation. Not being able to get rid of the fuzzy feeling in my head, my mother left the house, and I ended up living together with just my father. Thankfully, my father did the cooking and cleaning and the rest of the chores in the house, despite having to go to work every day. So I didn't really feel any inconvenience in those matters since my mother left us. However, I couldn't forgive my mother, unlike my father. When word got out that my parents had divorced, my friends asked me how much I received from the alimony. But when I told them that my father didn't demand a penny from my mother or the man as alimony, everyone was surprised, and they made fun of me because of that. It's not like I wanted money from her. I just felt like a loser when my father didn't do anything about it. Then one day, after a while had passed since their divorce, my father told me out of the blue, "Your mother wants to see you. Go and meet her." I didn't want to see the face of my mother, who betrayed me and my father, but he told me that I should meet her no matter what. So despite being reluctant to go, I agreed to meet her. I met with my mother at a restaurant. She bowed her head down and apologized to me.
"I'm sorry, Peter, that you had to go through that."
Hearing those words, something inside me started burning. I was furious. I was more than furious. If my mother didn't do such a stupid thing in the first place, we wouldn't be in this situation, and my father wouldn't have hit me. But just when I thought that it was too good to be true that my mother wanted to see me, my feelings exploded and burst into flames. I then shouted my feelings to her. "Dad hit me because of you! I don't want to see you ever again!" After I said that, I told my mother that I couldn't stand my father not doing anything to punish her, and when I protested to him, he hit me. Tears then started rolling down her cheeks, and all she could say was, "I'm sorry," again and again. At that young age, I couldn't understand how my father and mother felt. I was so frustrated that I walked out the door, like I was walking out of her life. Since then, my mother never called to see me again. 5 years after I started living with my father, he married another woman. My stepmother is a very cheerful and kind person. They look so good together, like they were meant to be. Before my father remarried, he told me that there's a certain someone he wants to marry. He asked me if I was alright with him remarrying. There was no reason for me to say no to his happiness because he had raised me well, doing everything he can for me as a single father. Also at that time, I was already 21, and I had a fiancé who was 3 years older than me. Several years have passed since my parents' divorce, so I didn't feel irritated anymore by what my mother did. Then one day, my father told me, "You're 21 now. How about you meet your mother?" If he told me that before, I would have rebelled. But my father is not happy with his new wife, and I now have a fiancé, and surprisingly, I felt like I was ready to see my mother again. So I agreed to meet her again. Then, a few days later, my father told me about the meeting place. I was a little surprised that my father still had my mother's phone number, even though it has already been years since he last saw her. Then, on the day of meeting my mother again, I went to the meeting place that my parents agreed on. It was at the same restaurant as before. My mother now had more wrinkles on her face compared to the last time I saw her. When my mother saw me walk into the restaurant, she happily waved her hand in my direction. When I arrived at my seat, she asked me,
Since you're now 21 years old, you can drink alcohol now, right?
I nodded my head yes. She then happily ordered wine for both of us. Surprisingly, I was able to stay calm, listening to what my mother had to say to me. According to her, after the affair, she never saw that man ever again, and she lived alone after that. However, my mother is now married to her coworker, and she's now living together with her stepson. My mother also wanted to know about my life, so I told her about my fiancé and my day-to-day life. My mother then admitted to me that what she did was stupid and wrong. She also said that she might not be my father's wife anymore, but in order to not lose the relationship she has with me, my father didn't change his phone number, so that he will receive her call whenever my mother tries to reach me. However, since I rejected her, she didn't dare to tell me that she wanted to see me. My father understood that I was at a rebellious stage in my life, but he made sure that my mother was able to be a mother to me anytime. He was truly grateful for that. After she broke up with the man she had an affair with, she lived her life thinking how much she regretted doing such a stupid thing. That's why she never used a penny from the money that my father handed to her, with the thought of wanting to give me money as a graduation gift. She worked hard and lived alone in a small apartment. She diligently saved up money for me. Saying that, she took a bank book from her bag, and she then handed it to me. Inside it was the amount that she saved up, and also the money that my father handed to her. The truth is, she thought of wanting to begin again together with my father, but she thought that there was no way that my father will forgive her for what she did. That's why she thought of living alone for the rest of her life. But her colleague accepted her for who she was, and everything that she went through. He supported her emotionally, and before she knew it, he became an important person in her life. I don't know if my father was right when he didn't attack my mother when he found out about the affair. But I now understand that the reason why I'm here, having a conversation with my mother, is because of the actions that my father took after the divorce. That was the first time I thought that my father was a cool guy. My mother then told me,
Peter, thank you for agreeing to see me. Also, I hope you become a good man like your father.
With a smile, trying hard to suppress the tears escaping from her eyes. Then, after our conversation, and after we finished our meal, we walked out of the restaurant together. According to my mother, her new husband will get a job relocation soon, so she decided to go with him. But she said that she would come home during Thanksgiving and New Year, so she asked me if I was okay with us meeting again. When I told her that I would introduce my fiancé to her the next time we meet, She looked so happy and got into a taxi. When I arrived home, my father said, "Welcome home, son. Did you go meet your mother?" I replied, "Yes. She has wrinkles on her face now." To which he replied, "Really? Is that so?" He gave me a kind smile. Before all of this happened, I've always thought that it's just normal to attack them and speak ill to them. But be it good or bad, I learned that there are other ways of doing things. I also realized how great my father is. When I showed the bank book that my mother handed me, my father told me to use the money wisely, because my mother worked very hard to save that amount. He then handed the bank book back to me. My mother told me to grow up to be a man like my father, but I have a newfound admiration for his strength and huge heart. I'm nowhere near being up to par with him yet, but I hope I will become up to par with him someday.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.